Hello, this is Tom, aka Gedeon here for Tabletop Tap Room. And today we're doing an interview on a Kickstarter game. But before I introduce these gentlemen, I just want to specify that we've been reporting this week on Mythic games, and that's completely different from today's topic, which is Mystic Days, the RPG. So I just want to, because I don't want to cause any confusion. Mythic Days, we're not happy with for what's going on with their Kickstarter, but we kind of like this Mystic Days. It's an innovative RPG from it's Andy Thomas and Dave Yeager. Am I correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourselves?
Go ahead, Andy. I'll let you go first.
Okay. Well, I am Andy Thomas. I am a co-designer of Mystic Days, and we're both from Central Michigan, and we started playing the D&D back. Well, I started back in the 70s, and my best friend back in kindergarten, we got actually his dad bought him the magenta box. That takes you back a little ways. And so we played Keep on the Borderlands, and just fell in love with it. Of course, we played role-playing games. We've been introduced to it, through the game of Life and the game of Clue. I mean, those, you do assume a role in that game, though, include no advantages to having Colonel Mustard over Professor Plum, but there's a character involved. And then, of course, D&D just took it to whole new levels, and we loved it and played it. And then Dave and I started playing in the late 80s. And so we've played OD&D, basic, first edition, second edition, and we just would slowly change this and that, like everybody homebrew stuff. And then eventually we decided, why don't we just make our own game? Then that was back in the mid 90s, and we started, and then life happened, and you have kids, and Dave moved away, and then COVID hit a couple of years ago, and Dave says, hey, look what I found in my basement, and here we are now. That's the skinny on that. So I'm happily married, got 2 adult children, married off, and living in their own homes, and with their own puppies, and so life is good, and our Kickstarter's going great this time, and so we couldn't be more happy, I guess.
Yeah. And Dave, you?
Yeah, well,
your turn, Dave.
I started out, back in the late 70s. I got the white box.
Ooh.
Oh yeah, the white box, and I couldn't find anybody that wanted to play the game. So I sat around with a white box for years. It wasn't until I hooked up with Andy that I started playing D&D, because there's nobody around. I lived way out in the country, and I don't even think, if I remember right, there wasn't even any kids that lived on the lake we lived on. You'd have some summer kids come up, and so I started a little later than Andy, even though I had an earlier edition. But yeah, we got playing, and yeah, homebrewing, and like Andy said, we kind of split up. I moved to the UP because life took over, had kids, Then 2 years ago, I'm looking around the basement, and what it was floppy disks. Most of the stuff was on floppy disks. If that gives you an idea, yeah. And thankfully, I had my old computer that still had a floppy drive. So I got off what we could. Some of it we couldn't even get off because it was outdated programs that I couldn't find a way to even get them off. And but that was okay. But yeah, I'm happily married, 3 daughters. Yeah, doing good. So here we are. Of course, our game doesn't look like anything that was on the floppy disk. I think we've got 1 or 2 ideas from it, and that's about it left over,
So what's in the name? I mean, we just had that little thing about Mythic Games versus Mystic Days. What's Mystic Days? It's such an unusual sounding name. Where did you come up with that for your game?
Well, to be honest, it was a search. You start thinking of names and searching, and you find out you're not real original. Today, really, there were so many names that we tried that, oh no, that's gone. Somebody in the UK's got it for their store, or whatever. And we finally come across Mystic Days. We weren't real sold on it at first. I don't think it was one of those. We went ahead and bought the domain, and then we kind of solidified. Then the more we messed with it, the more we kind of liked it. It was fine. It doesn't give you. I guess we've had one or two complaints that it doesn't sound real deadly. Mystic Days. But back in those times, that's what it was. It was mysterious. It was mystic.
So it's there's a little bit of a radical departure in your game. I don't even know if I want to use the word radical. It's because as I started to dig into the playtest PDF that Andy sent me and look at it, it looks like that you've actually used some bits and pieces that I've seen that were done differently. It's not that so much that you were radical. It's because I've seen bits and pieces of what you're doing in other games. But it's going to strike people as a radical. Some people as a radical departure, and some people don't like change. Let's face it, the 900-pound gorilla in the RPG room is 5e.
Right.
And so what are the positive points, the selling points of your game as you see it?
Are you there, Andy? He must be trying to find a better spot, maybe.
He's muted.
Looks like he might be driving. Oh, he's muted.
I think he muted himself.
Anyway, to be honest, we really never played past 2E on D&D. So we were unfamiliar and still are with a lot of the new RPGs out. We never played 3.5. We never played 4, never played 5E. So to us, anything that might look familiar to you to other games isn't because we played those other games and took it from here and there. One of our big things was classes, character classes. You're shoeboxed into what you can do. We never liked that in D&D. You're a druid, you can do this and nothing else. You're a wizard, you can do this and nothing else. And so we hated that about the classes. Armor class we didn't like because you could get so strong that there's no fear of weaker creatures at all. You could stand there and hold their forehead, as they're swinging at you, and laugh at them. We never liked that aspect of invincibility that you could get. And then combat, we didn't like the time it took. Combat, you got 15 minutes of role playing, and your one combat scene's an hour and a half to get through it because of the you've got to roll initiative, then you swing to hit, and if you hit, give damage, then I swing to hit, and if I hit, I give damage, and then to the next person. It was just such a slow way. And we think the way we've done it with this roll-off system, we think that we've really sped up the combat. And that seemed to always be the longest in a role-playing game, was a combat scene, which is fun to a point. And then it gets to the point of just get over so we can go and move on in our game,
I once read an RPG, and their advice was if things are slowing down in the game, have two mooks walk through the door with guns.
Yes.
And I thought, that is a great piece of advice, that if things are slow, things have slowed down, the players don't know what to do, they miss the clue, I'll just have two mooks walk through the door with guns. And, and it just kicks things off again. So it's a good piece of advice. But you mentioned slow combat, and that you missed out on 3 and 3.5 D&D. You would have hated 3.5 D&D.
Okay. All right.
I fell away from D&D, going off to college, getting involved in life. Here's Andy again.
Okay, cool.
And I fell away from D&D during 1E, and then came back later in life during 3.5, and we would sit down, and it would take like 3 hours to adjudicate a combat.
Right. Yeah.
Particularly at the higher levels. And I just was like, this is like watching paint dry. And it was, and then along came 4E, which tried to take D&D into like the EverQuest, video game type of experience. And I thought, this has got to be better. And it wasn't better. And I bought all the books.
And it wasn't.
And so people try to sell me on 5E, and I asked them the one question. I'm like, is the combat faster than 3.5? And they're like, a little bit. And I'm like, so I'm really glad to hear that the combat is very fast in 5E. I mean, in Mystic Days. But now, one other kind of radical departure, and it's not so radical to me, but some people might find it radical, is that in D&D you have this leveling, and you have more hit dice. You roll for more hit points, and you add them on, and you get to this at high levels. You get to the stratospheric level of hit points that nothing can really harm you.
Right.
Right. I mean, it takes a lot, and that's not your system. And I was kind of happy to hear that, because my favorite game is Star Frontiers, and your stamina doesn't change much from when you roll up your character. Right. And so tell us about your approach to, I know you don't call them hit points, but your approach to hit points.
Go ahead, Andy. Yeah. You've been off for a while.
Hit points, life points, whatever you want to call them. It's the lifeblood of your character. And yeah, we didn't want invincible characters. We just didn't like that part of D&D, or really any other game that has the idea that your character can be invincible. And it's fun to watch in a Marvel movie, but to actually play a character like that, for me, and I think for Dave, it is boring. Yep. We want that element of lethality, because you've always got that in the back of your mind as a player, that you have to be a little more strategic. You can't just charge in with your +5 sword and your armor class -10 and your 164 hit points, and the goblins can't hit you because they can't hit that armor class, and you just stand there, and then when it's your turn, you slay a couple of goblins, and 3 hours later you've killed 100 goblins and you've taken 1 point of damage. Boring. In our game, the very first hit you take can kill you. So you'd best strike first if you're going to strike at all. And, we have damage reduction system, and I know that's not new. Other games have used that, but that's what we did with the armor. So if you take a hit, you get to roll a die. The D24, there's one of those goofy dice comes in. And if you, depending on the armor that you have, you'll have a certain number to roll under, and if you do that, then your armor will protect you from a certain amount of damage, but it might not protect you from all of it. So so that's kind of what we did with that, and people seem to like it that have played it. We haven't had any complaints on that, and combat's really fast. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, but with the system that we've generated, the average weapon combat will last 3 rounds. Is that about right, what we found?
Yeah. Pretty close to 3 rounds, yeah. And that's
so
9 seconds.
A round is 3 seconds in Mystic Days. And so really you can resolve a combat with multiple opponents in a matter of 10 to 15 minutes.
Nice.
Or less.
Yeah.
So you, instead of having one combat in an hour and a half, you could have, 3-4 combats in a night of gaming.
Oh yes, yeah,
yeah.
Pretty easy, I think.
That really appeals to me. I much prefer, let's have the combat and let's move on. Let's do other things. I don't want a 3-hour 3.5 D&D combat.
Right, and neither did we
these days.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the dice, and I did notice that, and you've gone with a lot of your word was goofy dice. So there's So your game uses dice I don't own.
Okay.
So are you including dice in the game and the Kickstarter? Are you selling dice on your website? What's the thinking here with adding all the oddball dice that are out there?
Yeah, we do have them included with the game on Kickstarter, and we do have them separate. The dice are actually made by Impact Miniatures out of Indiana.
Oh, nice.
And I'm sure you're familiar with Dungeon Crawl Classics.
Yes.
That set will work with our game. They use all the same. They have 3 extra dice. They have a 30-sided, a 3-sided, and the percentage dice also in that set. But besides that, we use all the same dice. So it's not unusual. I don't know how much you want to get into the different dice right now, but we can. We don't have levels in Mystic Days. It's skills based. You get better with the skills you use. You don't get better with the skills you don't use. And that goes magic, weapons, right down the line. Any skill you use, you only get better with it as you use it. And that's where our dice come in. Depending on your level, whether it's magic or dexterity. Dexterity is for your combat. You will start with a minimum die. You might start with a D4.
Yeah.
And as you increase your skill, you get points every time that you are successful with what you're doing. You even get some points every time you're unsuccessful because we feel you fail forward. Once you get to 100 points, you raise up to the next die. So it's not that you're using a bunch of oddball dice all at once.
Right.
So anytime you perform an action in combat, you're going to use that same dice until you increase it, until you get enough to increase to the next die and the next die. And same with magic. It goes the same way. And magic is spell specific on the die. You're not going to cast fireball and get good with lightning bolt. So the more you cast fireball and successful, or lightning bolt and are successful, or even unsuccessful, because you get a little bit again. We fail forward. We learn from our mistakes.
Right.
So that's how the dice work. And we do from D4, D5, D6, D7, D8, D10, 12, 14, 16, 20, and 22. And that's how the progression works. So for combat, you're going to know until you increase that, if you're a D6, you're just going to roll that D6. So it's not that you're having to fumble with dice constantly throughout the game.
You probably pre-set up the dice you're going to use right with your character sheet.
Right, well, exactly. It's right in your character sheet what you use, and we've got the character. Did Andy send you a character sheet?
Andy sent me a bunch of stuff, and I got about 3/4 of the way through the first volume of the playtest document.
Right. Okay. Because there's a spot right on your character sheet that you'll put the dice you're using for each weapon. Yep. And there's a spot where also adds all of your bonuses you might get. You get a speed bonus for combat to your die roll. You might get a proficiency bonus for your weapon if you're proficient with it. So there's another spot right there that will say if you're using this sword, you get a +4 every time you roll. So you don't have to go looking every place else for all your different add-ons. You just roll the dice. You see it's a +4. You add it. So that seemed to speed it up too. You're not constantly thinking, well, I'm going to use my bow. Do I have any pluses to that? And right. It's right there in that one little box. You just look at every time. Yeah, there you go. You roll that and add that, and you're done.
I like when everything's on the character sheet that I don't got to consult the character sheet during the game. I don't have to go flipping through the book.
We've really kind of set it up to where there's really no need, like on a DM screen, to have tables on the side for the players. There's really nothing that they're going to need to see other than what they've got on their character sheet, really.
Yeah, that's a great way to do it.
Yeah,
that's a great way to do it. So
am I back?
Yes,
you're back.
Wow, welcome back. I'm sorry about all this nonsense with Verizon, but after this interview, I'm calling Elon Musk and I'm getting Starlink.
Now, I noticed something in your rules you were calling the peasant rule, and right away it made me think of Star Grunt, which has the golden BB rule that even a raw recruit taking a shot at, say, like an elite Navy SEAL with all the, he's in position, he's got all the advantages. So the raw recruit would be, rolling on a D4, and that Navy SEAL would be rolling on a D12 in that game, the best possible situation.
Okay.
And then they roll together, and highest number wins. And the raw recruit rolls a 3, and the Navy SEAL happens to have rolled a 2, and that golden BB got through. And you wouldn't think that, you would think it's the other way around. But still, is that close to what your roll-off system is?
Yeah, pretty much. We wanted the idea presented that nobody's invincible, and anyone can win in a combat situation. Everybody has what they call a puncher's chance. You know what I mean? Now, the odds are going to be against you if you have the D4 and someone else has the D24, obviously. But we also incorporated, it's exploding dice, but our term for it, boom roll. So you get a boom roll, you get to roll again, just like exploding dice. Only players get to do that, and it's only for combat. And so the referee and the monitors don't get that, and you don't get to roll it in damage. It's just for attacks and defenses. But that gives everyone a puncher's chance in combat. And does that answer that question?
Yeah. I had never heard of it as the peasant rule. That the king can kill the dragon, but the peasant can kill the king. And I just thought that was an interesting way of doing it. Of course, it fits the genre better than the gold BB. From Star Grunt. But same idea. And so it's how is the Kickstarter going with you mentioned the Kickstarter's going well. It's how many more days do you have left to it?
15, I think. I think there's 15, and we funded, so it's not an issue now. So yeah, we're pretty excited. We're gonna, of course, you always set your goal kind of a razor's edge on making it, but we made it, and we're excited. So we can actually get it in people's hands now.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the magic system. That's something that people are always interested in. And Andy kind of was letting me know that that sometimes the magic system, things can go bad with it too. And it sounded like you guys were stealing a page from Professor Dungeon Master over at Dungeon Craft, where, when you roll bad, there can be some bad results with the magic. So please tell me about your magic system.
All right. Yeah. Magic and Mystic Days. There's always a consequence to magic, shy of one roll. You can roll one roll if you do a miscast on your spell that results in nothing. We always thought it was odd that, and I hate going back to D&D all the time, but that's kind of the litmus test, and but your spells just always automatically, you cast them, they work. In Mystic Days, you have what we call a harnessing roll, and that's to draw the energy. And Mystic Days, our magic is kind of a mix of psionics and magic. We don't have spell components. We don't have hand gestures. We don't have verses, you've got to say. You're basically drawing the energy from around you. And then you have a channel die. So you roll twice, once to harness the energy and once to channel it into the spell. And the channel die is you forming that spell with the energy that you finally harnessed. And if you lose the roll off on the harness die, that's not that big a deal. That just means you didn't get the energy that you were trying to harness, and you lose access to that amount for the day. But if you've harnessed it, once you've got it, now you go to channel it and you miscast. There's a consequence, and you have to roll. There's a table in the AG's guide, which is the adventure guide. That's what we call our dungeon master, is the adventure guide. And there's spell specific tables for each spell, and that's a D7. And on a 1, that's really the only. I should say there's 2 good rolls. 1, nothing happens. 2 normally enhances your spell and makes it better. The other 5 rolls is not good. And on a roll of 7, you go to a general table, which is a raw energy release. The other 4 are spell specific failures. So what happens is going to be based on that spell that you were trying to form. You might say in a healing spell, you might actually heal the guy, but you're going to suck all the life points out of you to put into him. Oh. So fireball, of course, you can hit somebody in your party if something goes wrong, or do a party kill if you tried to harness enough energy to do that much damage. Mystic Days, it's illegal to perform any magic within the city limits. That's because of the devastation that can happen. So it makes it more fun. To me, a little more realistic. I mean, you're letting this raw energy out there. So if you do it wrong, why shouldn't something bad happen? Why shouldn't something happen with that? And there again, you've got your die, which goes up as you do it successful or unsuccessful. Your casting die will go up as you use a spell. So, and then we've got also in the game, we really wanted to sandbox magic too, because we always thought, why are you stuck to that spell? If you can manipulate magic, why can't you try anything you want? And we've got a framework in the book on how anything you can think up, if your referee allows it in their game, there's a formula in there that you can try anything you want. It'll give you a formula for area of effect or distance away or how much damage you want it to do. And so we've kind of sandboxed that out also.
Well, you're ticking all the boxes for me. I always kind of struggled with the Vancian magic system of D&D, where it's you memorize the spell, you cast it, you forgot it. I just never got that. I understand where it comes from, with the whole Vancian magic system that Gygax, was drawing from the literature he was reading. But, it's, and I've always leaned towards the magic systems where it's, you have a certain amount of power, you draw on that, and when you run out of that power for the day, then you're done.
Right.
Like harp and rollmaster type of systems. Although I've never played harp, I bought and read the books and loved them. I just could never find anybody to play it.
Okay.
Because they were like, oh, it looks like rollmaster, and I don't like rollmaster. I'm like, no, it's rollmaster light. It's good. You're gonna like it.
Yeah.
But so you're ticking all the boxes, and I definitely like that bad things can happen when you mess up casting magic. I mean, that's definitely something I've been looking at. I drank the Kool-Aid when Professor Dungeon Master preached that on his YouTube channel, and I definitely I like it. It sounds like your system is more mature than what he had proposed in his YouTube videos, and so I definitely interested in this magic system myself.
Right.
So with adventuring in Mystic Days, it sounds like that a beginning character could go up against, say, a dragon. And I imagine dragons must be formidable in Mystic Days.
Yeah. Where you might have 70 life points, the dragon's going to have 300 to 1,000. I mean, they're going to have so many more life points that you're never going to get strong enough in Mystic Days, I doubt, to stand toe-to-toe with a dragon by yourself. You would have to get extremely, extremely lucky on your rolls for quite a few rolls to take a dragon down. And that's, talking about, just going back to magic real quick, where you talk about D&D, that's how they limited their magic, was to the levels. If you're this level, you can only do these spells. We feel we've limited magic by the consequence if you do it wrong. You're not going to walk around and be constantly trying to fire a 300 hit point kill fireball, because the miscast can be so devastating. We think we've got it to where they're going to take a little bit of self-control in what they do with their spells, just because of what can go wrong. But yeah, in adventuring, you can. you can kill some pretty big creatures, but at the same token, that little goblin can kill you with one hit too. You know, that's where that peasant rule comes in. You're never invincible yourself. So we're hoping people play with more tact. They're not just going in, you know, it used to be in D&D, go toe to toe till the monster was killed.
Yeah.
Well, we've got a fortitude on our monsters. They're not going to fight to the death unless they're cornered. Who is, you know, unless they have no choice. You can as a player, but even your henchmen, they're not going to sit there and go toe to toe till they know they're going to die. There's going to come a point they're going to say, "Hey, I need to get out of here."
So it sounds to me like it's a little bit of a throwback to the 1E days where you brought along a lot of henchmen to help you out. You know, some of those early modules said, you know, for 10 to 12 characters, you know, and that wasn't 10 to 12 players. It was like, you know, 4 or 5 players, but you hired a bunch of henchmen to accompany you. And you had to play smart. You had to look for the traps with the 10-foot pole. You had to plan tactics. You know, if you just did let's line up and whack-a-mole, as I like to call it, one, it's boring, and two, you know, it just opens you up for you know, early retirement, shall we say?
Yeah. Another thing we've incorporated is a reach bonus to your weapons. So in reality, if you're going out against these big monsters, if you have a longer weapon, our weapons give you a +1 to your attack for every foot of weapon you have. So they've got to get past that weapon in order to even get within hitting range. So what I never thought of when I was playing D&D was pole arms. I'm thinking, who wants a pole arm? In Mystic Days, I want a pole arm. I want a spear. I want something to keep away from me because of the pluses it gives me to combat because of the length. And so you have to rethink combat a little bit too. You know, when I D&D, I always wanted the longsword. You know, longsword or battle axe. That was your 2 weapons. And Mystic Days, not so much.
Well, historically speaking, there was a lot of power in a long stick with a sharp point.
Yes, a spear is an excellent weapon.
Not so much in D&D.
No, there's no advantage to it. Where in real life, you know, that keeps them out 4 foot away from you, 5 foot away from you. And they've got to get past that before they're going to hit you. So I think people will find speed is a more important asset in combat than strength.
I was also noticing in your the weapons list, the one, speed is important for the number of attacks you can do.
Yeah.
But then weapons can, you know, the weapon can impact that. So if you want to be the character that's going crazy with the Ginzu knives, weapon choice could actually be important because it could enhance or slow down the number of attacks you're doing during the turn. Is that correct?
That's correct. Also, how you use your weapon. We have an action economy. Depending on your speed, that's what dictates how many actions you have per round. So you got to pay attention to that, because if you run out of actions in that round and your opponent still has some, they get a free attack. That's not a guaranteed hit, but they do get a free attack, because if you're out of actions, there's nothing more you can do. Oh, there he is again.
I'm back, maybe for the final time.
Maybe. Another thing with a weapon is depending on how you use it. That's how many actions it takes. A chop and a slash takes 2 actions, where a thrust just takes 1. So, and then depending on what you're doing with your weapon, I don't know if you looked, is how much damage. Your weapon does different damage depending on if you're using it in a swing, a slash, a chop, or a thrust. So there's a lot of different aspects to the weapon. Yeah.
The thrust and the slash both take 1, but it's a different action. The chop does the most damage typically, and that'll take 2.
That'll take 2. All right.
And then you can use a defensive action actually to block a. So you might be spreading them out to say, you know, 1 attack, 1 defense, trying to keep that character alive, just because the game can be so lethal.
Yep. And just like defense, if you've got a shield, you know, you want to say, I'm using my shield to defend. And if you do, then if they do still hit, you've got your shield plus your armor to possibly reduce that damage or negate it. So that's kind of nice. You can double up on armor also. You can wear chainmail with a leather, and so there's different things that can help enhance your safety in this game.
Right.
So one of my bucket list items is to participate. You're going to think I'm weird. Participate in a total party kill. I feel like I won't be done with role-playing games until I'm part of a total party kill. Not that I want to engineer it.
Yeah.
But it sounds like if I play Mystic Days, that I'll probably check that bucket list item off.
You could. Yep, you could.
All right. So you guys are doing a lot of game demonstration. You're going around to a lot of conventions and game days and introducing people to the game, is what I gather from Andy.
Yeah. We're hitting game cafes, of course. There's a lot of those around now. We've done 3 conventions now, 2 in Wisconsin, 1 in Minnesota at DaveCon there. And we got 1 coming up in Grand Rapids, Grand Con. Sadly, Michigan has not had that many conventions. So we're having to go out of state, which is okay. But we're doing what we can. We're a couple no-name guys. It's people don't know us. It's a new game. If we're making something for 5e, people know 5e.
Yeah.
They don't know Mystic Days. We're a completely out of the woods comes this game and these people that nobody knows. So we're trying to get it out there as best we can.
Right. And we lost Andy again, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So where's the Kickstarter? So this is your Kickstarter, and I see that you have already funded.
Yep.
42 backers, 16 days to go. And how much is a basic buy-in?
The basic buy-in right now, depending on how many are gone, we had 25 sets at $45, and that included the dice, the 3 books. You got your AG guide, your creatures and coins, and your player's guide. And then you get PDFs for the character sheets, the tally sheets, how you keep track of your hits and misses. We have a tally sheet that's pretty easy, pretty slick how it works. You get 1 adventure, a beginning adventure that works pretty good. You kind of starts you out learning the different combat tactics, which is a really nice adventure. So once those are gone, it pops up to 75.
Okay.
And then you can get just a player's book. We have limited on that because a lot of people like their own book if they're players. We really suggest in there that if you're not going to be an adventure guide, don't read the adventure guide and don't read the creatures and coins. It takes fun out of the game for you if you know everything that could happen. So if you're just going to be a player, get a player's book if you want that. We've got that separate with dice, and then of course we've got higher up. If you want to buy the adventure guide, the creatures and coins, and 5 players books, you can. We've got a buy-in for that, and then it comes with the 5 sets of dice. The one for the AG right there. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be the $100 buy-in.
Yeah, or excuse me, 4 players books.
And Crazed Delvers. Yeah. That's for buying for a whole party then.
Yeah. That way everybody can have their own player's book. The players can, and it's just nice to have because they can roll up their character and they don't have to get together just to do some simple stuff. And I don't know about you. I always like to have my own player's book.
Yeah, I like having a hard copy book.
Yeah. And these are hardcover. We went through drive-through this year to do the books.
Okay.
We had a failed Kickstarter earlier this year, and that's Andy and I are kind of old school, so we're thinking you got to buy the boxes, you got to get all the books, you got to get all the dice and the AG screens and everything else. And we were looking at, by the time we bought the minimum of what we needed, we were needing, $15,000 to even get off the table to even buy 1 book. Because we had to buy 250 of each book, so that's 750 books 500 boxes. And so we didn't make it.
Yeah.
And then we got looking into drive-through and thought, well, that gets it into people's hands. It saves shipping, especially overseas. We've got a few different spots. I mean, we sold some in Australia and over in Europe. And
Okay.
so they can get a lot cheaper. With a box set, we were looking at $60 shipping just to ship a box set overseas.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So this has really helped out. So that's why we're so much lower this time, because we didn't have to have that initial upfront cost to buy everything before we could even send the box out. I mean, I like box sets. I don't know about you. Yeah, so it was kind of disappointing for me because I like box sets, but it's still a goal. Down the road, we're hoping to be able to put something together if this pans out and people like it.
And new paradigms come along, and you have to change with it.
Oh yeah.
And I remember, because I collect miniatures, and I was I like heavy metal, and and plastic miniatures were coming along, and I was like, I like heavy metal. Well, nowadays I'm downloading STL files and asking a buddy to print the miniature for me on his resin printer.
Yeah.
My hypocrisy knows no bounds. I love box sets. I would buy in for the box set, but I realize not everybody's going to, and it's a little bit of nostalgia on my part, thinking back to that magenta D&D box, that I got for Christmas. So,
and that's us. We just like the box set, but it was such a hurdle to get over for a couple of guys that aren't known in a game that isn't known. It was just a really big hurdle, that initial upfront money you needed for everything to get going. Yeah. And this didn't do it. We did not offer PDF only. You do get PDFs of all the books if you buy in on the Kickstarter. There again, we're old school. We don't understand the PDF. We just hate that how everything comes out and people have it up online within a week, to pirate it out. And it's kind of aggravating, but it is what it is. So we're probably going to offer PDF only. We just didn't do it on this Kickstarter, but if you buy the books, you do get a PDF of the book with it.
Right. That is handy as well. I mean,
yeah, I know a lot of people use their tablets now.
Yeah. So this is Mystic Days, and check out the Kickstarter, and check out this game. With the $45 buy-in. Scroll this back up. Where we're at 75 right there. So 45. I mean, we're kind of talking beer and pizza money. So it's, if you got a little bit of mad money put aside, I mean, this is a Kickstarter to think about. It kind of, is a nice alternative to D&D, and a nice alternative to some of the long running complaints about D&D, I think. So I want to thank you, Dave, and Andy, who keeps popping. Poor guy.
We'll get him some good internet.
Next time when you do $1 million Kickstarter, you'll be able to buy the better internet for him, right?
There you go. That's right. Yeah. Buy the game so we can get Andy some internet.
All right.
On that $45, I don't know how many are left. That was only 25 at that. So just so you know, then it pops up once those 25 are gone. So just to let everybody know if they're interested. I don't know what's left, but hop on while you can if you think you're something you might like.
All right. So Andy's trying to log back in for the goodbye, and
can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Well, we'll try it one more time, but I'm on the phone right now with Verizon canceling all internet service, and I'll be on the phone with Elon Musk, his direct line, and he'll be setting me up with Starlink from now on.
Okay.
All right. Well, we're just about to sign out. So this is Tom for Tabletop Tap Room. I want to thank Dave Yeager and Andy Thomas for coming on the show, telling us about their game. I find it very intriguing and fascinating. And so I just want to promote to all of the subscribers, regular watchers, check out the Kickstarter on Mystic Days. It looks like a very innovative game. I want to thank everybody for watching, and encourage everybody to keep on gaming. And thank you, Dave. Thank you, Andy.
All right. Yep. Thanks, Tom. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Tom. It was a pleasure. Sorry about the connectivity issues.
Yeah, stuff happens, you know.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Keep on gaming. Take it easy, guys.
All right. Thanks.